The iPhone 5C is arguably Apple's worst iPhone of all time. Back in the 2010s, Apple began to really establish a rep of only making premium products, and then they launched the iPhone 5C,
unapologetically plastic,
which completely shifted their brand reputation. Everyone was clowning the 5C, but Apple bounced back. So I'm gonna go through how the launch of the plastic iPhone 5C majorly poofed on their brand identity, how they learned from their mistakes and geniusly reestablished themselves with the iPhone SE, and where they're heading towards today. Golly, the iPhone 5C came out a whopping 12 years ago. Dang. Apple was coming off of a hot year with the release of the iPhone 5, arguably one of the most iconic and impactful iPhone designs of all time. Apple had built this massive premium reputation and put themselves in a different class than all the other budget smartphones. And in 2013, they released their first ever second iPhone model, the iPhone 5C, alongside the iPhone 5S. And the 5C basically screamed, "Hey everyone, I'm
unapologetically plastic."
The 5C was visually on the complete opposite end of the spectrum compared to the 5S. The iPhone 5C is for the poor and ugly, while the 5S is for the rich and famous. People immediately attributed the C in 5C as cheap. And once the culture caught on, you know it was over. It was a product that completely went against their recent design philosophy and brand identity of a premium feel. It also really didn't help that the 5S had the coolest and most convenient new feature with that fingerprint scanner. Ooh, and it had a new shiny gold new colorway. Apple released one of their best iPhones with one of their worst, and that heightened things. The 5C felt like a knockoff iPhone or even a toy. At this point, even iPods weren't plastic, so it felt like they were going backwards. On top of the plastic, the colorways only added to the cheapness. It was mainly the glossy plastic material combined with the cheaper colorways, because if it had metal, it would have been a different story. Shoot, even if it was matte plastic. At the time, I was in high school, and before, you were the coolest kid if you had an iPhone. Now, you were only the coolest if you had the iPhone 5S. Meanwhile, I had an LG, and the cherry on top was the polka dot cases. This is just my personal opinion, but they were butt ugly, like they screamed tacky. So visually, this just completely changed Apple's brand reputation. But the worst part was, normally in this time there was a pattern of the new iPhone being 200 on a new contract and the previous model moving down to 100. But that year, the iPhone 5 was replaced by the 5C. And so naturally people compared the two, and the 5C felt like a downgrade from the 5. In addition, Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, had stepped down from Apple 2 years ago, and some people were saying Steve would never do this. While we don't know if this is true, it added to people straight hating on the 5C. This was also Apple's year of releasing another arguably most iconic and impactful element, the complete redesign of iOS 7. Which might also have been a reason why people didn't want the 5C, because they felt like their older phone was already upgraded when they got iOS 7. The sad part is, the actual mold and body of the 5C was nice, just plastic. Honestly, the phone itself, other than its material, was a good phone. But because of everything I mentioned, that got overshadowed immediately. After just 2 weeks, Walmart dropped the price in half. It ended up selling 24 million units, which actually is not bad, but the 5S skyrocketed with 164 million units sold. Apple was not happy with their reputation, and it was a repeat L the next year. In 2014, they made the iPhone 5C free with a contract with the caveat of only 8 gigabytes, downgrading from 16 gigabytes, but also, this was a time in which iOS took the majority of the storage, and so on the 5C, you really only had 3 gigabytes. That is so funny, oh my gosh, but yeah, the people were not feeling the 5C at all. But luckily for Apple, the iPhone 6 overshadowed all of that. With everyone increasing their phone screen sizes but Apple finally did this with the iPhone 6. So people kind of forgot about the 5C because of the hype of the 6. And then Apple discontinued the 5 and focused just on their premium flagship line. And in 2016, Apple brilliantly released their new iPhone SE. They simply reused the same exact body of the 5S, but upgraded it internally with the newest processor. So it had the same exact performance as, at the time, the recently new iPhone 6. This was so smart because people still loved that small iPhone and the design of the 5S. It was really a win for everybody. I mean, Apple saved money because they could simply recycle leftover parts of the 5S that weren't sold, and we could save money on this phone because it was released at a mid-range, actually affordable price of $400 no contract. And while it was a one-for-one copy of the 5S, and they did get clowned for that a bit, everyone else in the majority of people loved it, especially because of that cheaper price and the fact that it had the newest chip from Apple. This was the first iPhone that people actually felt from Apple had great value, and no one ever thought that about iPhones. So it actually boosted and reestablished Apple's reputation as not only a premium brand, but one with value too, which was the exact reverse of what the 5C did. And this would work for years to come with the SE2 and SE3. There was an iPhone for almost everybody. They learned from the iPhone 5C that if phones aren't different enough from the previous year, people will buy the old phone over the new phone. So in replacing the 5 with the 5C, it actually boosted their sales of the 5S, in which now they quickly take away their Pro models after a year as they know it'll compete too well with their new phones. So they completely revitalized their brand identity and cheap was no longer associated with Apple. But their SE3 was getting outdated, in which most people thought they were going to continue with the SE4. In all of 2024, there were rumors that Apple was going to revive the iPhone SE with their 4th iteration, but in 2025, they did something strange. They released the new iPhone 16e, in which they sort of recycled the iPhone 14 body as predicted with a technically new back, but the weirdest thing is, they raised the price from the rumored $450 to a whopping $600. They completely left the mid-range market. Basically, I think instead of them targeting people in the mid-range market, I think they're trying to entirely get people to move up a tier from the mid-range market to the baseline. So as of today, there are no longer any cheap iPhones that you can buy at retail. Luckily for us, refurbished phones have gotten to be really good and cheap. Overall, while Apple took an L with the 5C, they adapted with the SE and it changed them forever in their favor. They even went on to use the SE model for their watch line as well. What do you think though? Was the iPhone 5C overhated on? Did the plastic overshadow the phone itself? Could anything save the 5C? Let me know in the comments. Peace!